Hi, my name is Christine List, and I am a yoga teacher based in Seattle, Washington. And I'm also a volunteer for Yoga Behind Bars, which is a Seattle-based nonprofit that has been offering yoga and meditation classes to youth and adults living behind bars since 2008. And we work in facilities throughout Washington state, and our goals, like yours, are to bring healing and trauma recovery to incarcerated people in our communities who are often survivors of crime and trauma themselves. And we do this in the spirit of healing the whole community. And like you, we bring healing into action. So this practice is going to be about a 20-minute practice that will be kind of low to the ground. We'll be seated to begin, and we will be on all fours, and we'll be on our backs and possibly on our stomachs. So finding a place in your home or in your space where you can be comfortable. If you have a yoga mat, that's great. It's okay if you don't need one. You might want to have some padding to put under you, like under the knees for hands and knees. So I just have a towel. You could also use a blanket or cushions. And for our seated, to open and close, we're going to be seated. So you might want to have a chair nearby that you can sit on so that you can find your upright spine. Or if you're comfortable sitting on the floor and doing so without having to round forward or be uncomfortable in your hips, you could come to a seat on the floor. So I'm going to sit cross-legged on the floor on this pillow cushion, and that might work for you, or you could find some other seated position that is better for your knees and hips. If we sit on the floor and we don't have a cushion underneath us, sometimes our knees will be up here and we'll be kind of rounded. So we're just trying to take that rounding out of our spine and be able to find a neutral position of our spine with the curves of our spine intact. So finding your seat wherever it is and just allowing yourself for a moment to sit and ground down into your seat. You might feel your sit bones, those two kind of bones that poke out, the bony prominences, and kind of sway a little bit from side to side. Just noticing your habits with sitting. If you sit more heavily into one side or the other, just kind of evening that out. And you also might sway a little forward and backwards, and just noticing in that way what kind of your kind of default position is. And see if you can kind of lengthen up out of the heaviness of your seat. And you might close your eyes, or you could find a soft gaze in front of you. And just allow yourself to settle into your seat for a few balanced breaths. So breathing in and out through the nose. In yoga, we generally, most of the time, breathe through the nose, which has benefits. It cleans the air and warms the air and humidifies it as it comes into our lungs. So breathing in and out through your nose in a steady, comfortable way. Just kind of having a sense of curiosity about your breath, what it feels like, and then kind of changing it a little bit, maybe making it a little bit more balanced, a little deeper perhaps. Feeling the position of your head and how it's balanced right on top of your shoulders. And then you might start to make some circles. So kind of circling the upper body around in one direction. You might let your chest come forward and then perhaps round a little bit as you come back, moving in some way with your breath. Kind of coordinating the movement with your breath if you can. And then switching the direction of those circles. Also feeling your belly moving as you're making these circles. So kind of maybe the belly's drawing back as you round and then letting it release a bit as you come forward. Just one more time around. And come back to your seated position with your upright spine. And just allow your shoulder blades to relax. You might bring your palms down and just pause there, just feeling the effects of that simple movement. Staying with the awareness of your breathing, just letting it be comfortable, breathing in and out through the nose. Relaxing your jaw and your forehead. And then from there, let's come to hands and knees. So if you're sitting up on a cushion, you can set that off to the side. I'm going to use my extra padding under my knees. So you might do that too. So coming and bringing your knees right underneath your hips and your hands right underneath your shoulders, and then find your tabletop position. So kind of pressing into the floor. You might rock a little bit from side to side, just feeling the wrists, maybe a little bit back and forth. Finding your breath, and then coming back to this position of hands and knees. Let's start some cat-cow stretches. So you're gonna start the movement with your pelvis. So tipping, you could start with cow, tipping your pelvis and letting the movement ripple up your spine, and then round, tucking your pelvis, and feel how that movement ripples all the way up to the head, with your head being the last thing to move. Arching and inhaling into cow, and exhaling and rounding into cat. So your spine is moving in one long fluid chain of bones, and also each of those little joints is moving individually. So just feeling your way through, maybe one more time. Feeling how the belly is lifting as you come into cat, and lengthening as you come into cow. And then back to your tabletop position, reaching back through your right foot, tucking your toes into the floor or the mat, and rocking a little bit, stretching into the back of your right calf. Letting your breath be steady and finding your gaze. Keeping the neck long, and then letting that foot float up. Press back through the heel, feeling this sacrum, your lower back, staying level. And if you'd like a little more challenge, you could lift your left arm, keeping your thumb pointing up so the shoulder blade can slide. So feeling connected through the center of your body, belly's lifting, keeping the head lifted, finding your breath here. In and out through the nose, one more breath, and release it. And then circle your hips. Let your hips go in one direction, and maybe your head goes in the opposite direction, kind of making a figure 8 shape. If that feels good, breathing. And then circling back to center. Finding your tabletop position again, this time reaching back through the left foot, tucking your toes, rocking a little bit back into the heel, into the ankle joint. And then back to center and letting that leg float up, press back through the heel, keeping your sacrum level, feeling your belly kind of lifting away from the floor, and possibly adding the right arm, thumb pointing up, and take a couple breaths here. If you want even more challenge, you could try lifting the top of your right foot off the floor. Nice steady breath, steady gaze, and release that, and then circle the hips again. Letting the hips come around in this figure 8 kind of way with your upper body circling in the opposite. And coming back to center, let's come down onto the belly into Sphinx pose. So walking your legs back and bringing your forearms to the floor, spreading your hands, letting the chest be open here. Lift your belly away from the floor and tip your tailbone back down towards your heels to take compression out of your low back. And find your breath here. Steady breath. You could turn your head and eyes to look over your left shoulder and back to center and over the right shoulder. Maybe one more time through. And back to center. And then walk your elbows forward. Maybe bringing your fingertips together and palms apart so you're feeling some stretch kind of in the backs of your arms and kind of dragging your elbows towards you, broadening in the middle of your upper back. Breathe into your belly here. Nice steady breath. And then release that. You could make a little shelf for your head with your hands, rock your hips. And then bringing the hands under the shoulders and coming back up, let's come into prayer pose. So lift the hips and walk the hands forward. You might need a cushion under your head, or maybe the head can come easily to the floor. Maybe you're lifting your forearms and kind of wrapping the elbows in so you feel some broadening in the middle of your back, even as you're lengthening your tail. And you might let your head rock side to side. If it feels better for your body, you can also let your elbows come down to the floor. So just smoothing over those worry lines in your forehead. And back to center. Walk your hands over to the left, drawing your right hip back. Letting the head relax here. Feeling a big stretch up the right side of the torso. Steady breath in and out through the nose. Just letting your nervous system stay calm with the breath. Walking your hands back over to the right and drawing the left hip back, letting the head relax back and breathing. And then hands back to center. And maybe coming onto the forearms here. And you could rock a little bit forward and backward here. Sliding your shoulder blades and feeling some stretch in the shoulders as you do this. So bringing a little bit of body weight forward and back. And then coming to sit, and you could let your feet go to one side, hips to the other, and bring your feet forward. And come into a seated position. So if this feels really hard to find your upright spine here, just bend your knees. And then we're going to roll back. So you could do that with your knees bent. Just do your best, kind of tucking your pelvis under and rolling back onto your back. And then we'll draw knees in towards the chest and rock your hips, your knees from side to side, just kind of rolling and breathing, staying with your breath. And then we'll bring the feet down and kind of feel for the curve of your neck. So try not to flatten out the back of the neck. You can lift your chin a little bit. Relax the shoulders and feel open in your chest. Your palms could be facing open. And from here, press into your feet and lift the hips. So this is bridge pose. So coming up as far as it feels comfortable, and pause and take some breaths here. If you feel like your breath is, you're having trouble breathing or you're holding your breath, just back out of the pose a little bit, re-find your breath, and then move a little further into the pose with the breath. Lifting the hips a little higher if your breath is good with it. I'm just taking a couple more breaths here, feeling the strength of your legs and your hips. And then just slowly rolling down. See if you can put one vertebrae down on the floor at a time. Uncurling your spine onto the floor. And then draw the knees in again, just rocking a little bit back and forth from side to side. And then we'll take the left foot to the floor and bring the right ankle on top of the left knee. And this might be enough that you can feel some stretch in the back of the right hip, in the hip rotators, or you might lift the foot. You might be able to reach back behind your thigh. This is also nice to do on a wall, so the left foot would be on a wall. And if you have the back of your thigh, you could kind of press your right elbow into the inner right thigh and just rock a little bit from side to side. Don't forget about your breath, letting your breath be comfortable. If you feel like really constricted in your chest to reach through for the thigh, if that feels tense or uncomfortable, just take your arms back down and just use your muscular strength to keep your legs in this position. And then release the left foot back down to the floor if you have it lifted, and unwind your right foot. Take it off the knee and back to the floor. And then we'll bring left ankle on top of the right knee. And once again, this could be enough with some rocking here. Staying with your steady, comfortable breathing in and out through your nose. Or you could lift that foot or even reach back behind the thigh. Taking a few breaths here. Feeling the stretch in the rotators, the hip rotators on the left side. Sometimes in yoga, we use a breath called Ujjayi breathing. It's a Sanskrit word that's kind of loosely translated as breath of victory. And that's where we close the back of the throat off just really gently, making a little friction in the back of the throat so you can hear your breath and you can feel it. It's kind of like if you were listening to, if you put your ear on a seashell, you can kind of hear that soft sound that sounds like waves or sounds like the ocean. It's like that, or like the wind. And releasing that foot back to the floor, so it's a gentle sound. And then unwinding your left leg, bringing it back to the floor. Taking the arms out to the sides, bringing your feet about the width of the mat, or maybe the hip width. You could let your knees drop over to the left. And if that feels good, you can stay there, or if you want a little more stretch in this right hip, you could pick your left ankle up and bring it on top of your right knee, only if that feels safe for your right knee. And that kind of intensifies the stretch up the right side of the hip and into the belly and the rib cage. So breathing here. Nice steady breath. Always coming out. If you feel the discomfort that we can stay with and breathe through is one thing, muscular discomfort. But if you feel any sensation that feels burning or pinchy or like you're moving into harm or injury, then just obviously just get out of that. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference though between the kind of discomfort that is productive and helpful that we can breathe through and some of the discomfort that's moving into pain and injury. So kind of using your practice to learn about that for yourself. Bringing your knees back up to center and then over to the right, letting them drop to the right. You might look a little back over the left shoulder, keeping your shoulders heavy on the floor, maybe picking up the right ankle and bringing it on top of the left knee if that's feeling okay for you, or just letting the knees stay over to the right. Breathing. This is called deer pose. Just feeling your relationship to the earth here, to the floor. We don't spend a lot of time, at least in our culture, on the floor necessarily. So it's really good to have a good relationship with the ground and to be able to get up and down easily. And in order to do that, we have to practice it and spend time. We have to spend time on the floor. And just another breath there. And release that and bring the knees back up. And draw the knees into the chest again, just rocking a little bit. And we'll extend the left leg. Draw the right knee in towards the chest. And that might be enough. You might stay right there. You could move the knee a little bit. Or maybe taking a twist, extending your right arm out to the side, bringing the right knee across. And I like to keep my shoulders on the floor so my knee doesn't come all the way across to the floor. Sometimes it's nice to prop that with a cushion. So just finding in your body what feels right in this potential twist, or just staying with the knee drawn in towards the chest. And taking a couple breaths here. If you're in the twist, you might feel length on the right side of your torso. You could even take your thumb into the hip crease and kind of feel where that hip is, maybe drawing it down and away from the ribs a bit. And then releasing that twist, bringing left arm out to the side. Actually, let's take the knee into the chest first. Extend your right leg and draw your left knee in, feeling softness in the front of your hip and the hip flexors. Maybe just moving that hip joint around a little, and then possibly coming into the twist. So left arm extends and the left knee comes across. You might look back over your left shoulder. So completing that spinal twist in your neck gently. And take a couple breaths there. Nice steady breath. And then releasing that twist and rolling back onto your back, maybe taking one last time of drawing knees in towards the chest and rocking a bit, staying with your breath here. And then perhaps we're going to come into a final resting pose. You might start that with your feet together and your knees apart in this reclined bound angle pose, or we call it cobbler pose sometimes, if that feels comfortable enough for your knees and hips. If it doesn't, just extend the legs. We're going to head there anyway. See if you can let your shoulders relax back. It might help to bring the palms facing open. And then we'll extend the legs one at a time, coming into our final resting pose for a moment before we come back to our seat to close. So letting yourself be heavy here, feeling how the earth is holding you. Gravity is a pretty reliable force in our lives, so letting gravity hold you down and allow your muscles to soften and be heavy and relaxed. Just feeling the effects of that practice. You could close your eyes if you like. Noticing how your breath is coming back to its own comfortable, natural rhythm. Your body will breathe with or without your consciousness, as long as you're alive. And so I'm just allowing your breath to return to this more kind of shallow, kind of relaxed state. And just feeling the effects of that short practice and how it might have shifted something for you. And you might allow that practice to integrate into your whole being, your body, mind, and spirit. Just taking anything from that practice that benefited you forward with you as we begin to roll back onto our side and come back to our seat, and leaving anything that did not serve you. You could draw your knees in and roll onto your side and just come back to your seated position. If you need to come back to a chair, that's fine. Just take the time to do that, or back onto the floor, maybe onto a cushion. And again, feeling your sit bones against the floor, just bringing yourself into balance in your seat. And taking a couple of nice balanced breaths here, in and out through the nose. Feeling length in your spine and feeling grounded. And you might look around the room and reorient yourself, just bringing yourself back into your space, wherever you are. And then you might bring your hands together at your heart, and you might bow your head to your own practice, your own inner teacher, your higher self, or your higher power. Thank you so much for your focused attention and your dedication to this practice today.